Okay, for this video, we are talking about ellipses. Specifically, at first, we're going to talk about the parts of an ellipse. I know it says entry 26, but yours may be different depending on when we get there. And the standard we're going to cover here is MM3G2BC, which means essentially we're talking about different conics, graphing those conics, and going from the equation to the graph. So, as you can see here, we have this ellipse. You can tell it's kind of oval shaped, and we have all these little arrows pointing to different things on this ellipse. So I'm going to start our recording and go through and do our labeling. Now, the very thing right there in the center, of course, is going to be your center, just like a circle and ellipse has one too. The next thing you need to know is, and let's see, there we go. This longer part here of an ellipse, you're going to have one longer and one smaller. The longer part is going to be your major axis, and as you can tell by your arrow, major axis. If this one's your major, going the other way is going to have to be your minor. So that's going to be your minor axis. Now, these can flip-flop. Instead of being across and up and down, maybe the other way around. Now the next thing is we've got these little endpoints. The ones on the ends of the major axis, these are called your vertices. And the ones on the ends of your minor axis, these can either be called your minor vertices or your co-vertices. It just depends on what the question's asking. Sometimes it writes it one way, sometimes another. Alright, and if you look here, we still have a couple little arrows we haven't talked about yet. And we've got these little black dots that they're pointing at. These dots are called the foci or foci, however you want to say them. It's like potato, potato. It all means the same thing. These are points that causes the curve to do what it does. And there's a specific way we can find those. And we will talk about that here in just a minute. So I'm going to move on to our next slide, where we're standard form of an ellipse. Now the standard form is written right here, where you have your x minus h squared over a squared, and you have your y minus k squared over b squared equals 1. You're going to know it's an ellipse because it's always going to have that plus sign in the middle, and it's always going to equal 1. If it doesn't, then you got to do something to fix it. So I'm going to start our recording. First thing, we got to get our center. It's always going to be just like your circle. It's going to be the opposite of what you see with your x and with your y. Just like the circles. Alright, second thing is our major axis and our minor axis. Our major axis is always going to be whatever letter or variable, depending on which way you think about it, is above your larger denominator. So if a squared is the bigger one, x is going to be your major axis. If b squared is going to be the bigger denominator, then y is going to be your major axis. It's going to go up and down. Now, whichever one's your major, the opposite's going to be your minor axis. So if a squared is the bigger denominator, that's going to mean y is going to be your minor axis. If b squared is your bigger denominator, that means x is going to be your minor axis. Alright, let me catch up. Alright, and then to find a. You got to think we have a squared in the equation. If we just want a by itself, take the square root of it. And then right there, that's going to tell us how far left and right we're going to go from our center when we're graphing it. And if you think for b, we got a b squared up here in the equation. Take the square root of that, and that's going to tell us how far up and down we're going to go from our center. Alright, so I'm going to stop that. There we go. That way you can see it all perfectly. The next thing we need to talk about is now you know how to find the different things. We got to do some practice on it. So, here are 4 questions. You need to determine the center, major axis, minor axis, A and B for each one. So, pause this, take a minute, and give it a shot. Alright, here come the answers. So let me go through and start up our recording. Okay, your center, make sure you take the opposite of what's with x first, then the opposite of what's with y. So you should have had 2, -4. For your major axis, your 36 is the bigger one, so major axis here should have been that x. Since x is the major, that means y had to be the minor. A is always going to be your square root of what's under x, and if we think square root of 36 is 6, and then for b, square root of 9 has to be 3. Number 2, for our center, we see -3 in the front, but we go, oh my goodness, that's with the y. So that's the second part. So I need to do my 4 first. So my center should be -4, 3. For my major axis, the 25 is bigger, so I know y is my major, which means x has to be my minor. A is going to be the square root of 25, which is, square root of 9. Excuse me, it's going to be 3. Then b is going to be our square root of 25. If you made a mistake like I did, Shame, shame. Make sure you look at which one's under which letter. So, number 3. Number 3. Remember, it's going to be take your opposite, so it should be 5 and then your negative 2. X is over your bigger denominator, so it means X is your major and Y is your minor. Square root of 9 is our 3 for A, and square root of 4 is our 2 for B. Number 4. We go looking, and there's nothing there, and we see a Y in the front. So that means since there's no number behind the Y, it's going to be that 0. Now for your major axis, Y is above the bigger denominator, which means X has to be your minor. Square root of 49 is 7 for our A, and 9 is the square root of 81 for our B. All right, then the last thing we need to know about ellipses is how to graph these things. So, we have one problem here. You might want to pause this and copy this down so you've got it in your notes. Okay, let's go through how you graph these. So I'm going to start our recording. First thing we need is we need that center. So we've got 2, negative 4, which we're going to go ahead and plot right over here. The next thing we need is we need our A. So square root of 36 is 6, and that's going to tell us how far left and right to go for our points. So 6 to the left is here, 6 to the right is over here. Next, we need our B. So square root of 9 we know is 3. So it's got to go up and down because that's our minor. So up 3 and down 3 from our center. And then we'd go through and play connect the dots to draw our ellipse. And now we need to find our foci. We talked about those on the first slide, remember? The way we find those is we take the bigger denominator and we subtract the smaller one and take the square root of that. So when we subtract them, we get square root of 27, which is approximately 5.1. And since the foci have to lie inside the ellipse, it has to be on the major axis. So we need to count left and right from the center. So left 5.1 gets us here. Right 5.1 gets us right here. Now we need to go through and do some labeling of our vertices and co-vertices. Since our vertices are on the end of our major axis, we need the ones that were 6 away in the green. So that's the negative 4, and the 8, negative 4. Our co-vertices were the ones we did in blue. So that would be our 2, negative 1, and then our 2, negative 7. And that's pretty much everything you need to know about graphing ellipses.